It's time to pick a side. The border war is on the air with BG and TanMan.
Hello, faithful listeners, and welcome into another week of the Border War. This is episode 92, quickly climbing the charts all over the internet, all over the world. Welcome in. I'm the TanMan. I'm here with BG. Say something so all the listeners know that you are not a mime, like my father was once accused of being.
I thought we were doing 91 and 92 today. Are we starting with 92?
We're starting with 92. Last week was 91.
Really?
This week is 92. If you knew all the math, you would
know
know that 91
I was
comes
just
after
going by
92.
the notes you sent me earlier, which I am now going to check to make sure that you're not wrong. What else do you want me to say?
Ba-boom.
92 and 93. Well, that's what
I
tried to tell you.
Like I said. Again, we apologize for that 1 minute of your life that you'll never get back. Welcome in.
That wasn't a minute.
It was. We're at a minute 9, right? We've been on 10.
But I didn't start until like 30
minute
seconds
12.
in.
Minute 13.
Hey, you'll appreciate this text that a buddy sent me last night. Clearly a fan of the show. He texts me, "A bet somewhere right now in Texas, Jason Garrett is clapping." And I said, alone in a dark room.
No, in a meeting room with Jerry Jones.
Who is probably going to sign him to a contract extension, right?
Yeah.
We starting with football?
No, episode 92 is basketball.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I brought Jason Garrett up. I'll bring it up again next show. I'll tell that whole joke.
Or you could not, and we could just pretend like Jason Garrett does not exist.
You love talking about Jason Garrett. Let's talk some basketball.
Let's talk some basketball, man.
I'm much more in the mood to talk basketball than I was a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah,
shocking.
Interesting.
Conference play is underway. I don't know about you. This is my favorite time. Football season is now wound down. College football season is over.
Your favorite time of the year is when college football's over?
My favorite time of the year is when we get into conference play, because that means the NCAA tournament is a mere, what would you say, 8 weeks away?
Yeah.
Oh,
the
man,
second best sports month of the year, March.
It's not second best, man.
October is the best.
No, it is not. It's not even close. BG, we'll start with the ACC, since that is where the college basketball bread is buttered. It is loaded. No shocker at the top. You've got Virginia, followed by Virginia Tech at 3-1, Carolina at 3-1, Duke at 3-1, Syracuse.
Virginia
at 3-1.
Tech getting checked a little bit lately here, though. That was a beat down.
Yeah, and
that was a beat down.
At the bottom of the standings, tied with the Boston College Eagles, sit the Clemson Tigers at 0-3. After that Sweet 16 run, the Tigers so far have not been able to capitalize on the momentum that they built last year. So what jumps out at you as we look over the ACC a week or two into the conference play?
Now, I think your prediction last year after Virginia's really shocking upset in the first round of the tournament, I remember you saying the week after that, people don't need to make too big of a deal out of this. This team's going to be back. They're going to be a 1 seed again,
they look good.
They're money, man. They have. I mean, just what they did to Virginia Tech last night. I mean, that was not a competitive game, really, from the tip. Their defense is just smothering, man. I mean, when they play at the top level. Like you said when we were getting ready to play, man, you can struggle to score 45 points. It's crazy.
If they're going to make threes and shoot the ball like they shot last night, I don't know very many teams that'll beat them.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, right now, I think you pencil Virginia in as a 1 seed. Maybe even in one of those erasable pins. Like I think it's. I put it about 75-80% chance right now. I just don't see.
For Virginia?
Yeah.
I'll put Virginia down in a permanent marker as a 1 seed right now. I tell you what gets me is they've got a big game Saturday against Duke. If you saw any
that's going to be a very telling game. Not just in who wins it, right? But just how it goes down.
Well, how Duke reacts, because you watch the Syracuse game, they played without the point guard Trey Jones from about the 12-minute mark or so on. And you could tell the difference in that Duke defense when he was out there for the 6 or 7 minutes he was there, and once he left with that shoulder injury, They're saying he's out indefinitely. I think that I personally think
how
that
many years
still,
is this that we've talked about? I mean, like before the show even started. I mean, it always comes down to the point guard for Duke. It feels like they always have everything but that one position nailed down. And in college basketball especially, that's where it's at.
I tell you, I think that has really opened the ACC up, to be honest with you. Syracuse is a team that had not shot the ball well yet this year. They go up there without Trey Jones in the lineup, and they're finding the bottom of the bucket all night long. Now, the good news for Duke is Syracuse's zone is always tough to solve. I think if they had gone to Zion right there at the foul line a little more, I think he could have put up 60 and they would have won. But even in a losing effort against that Syracuse zone, they still managed to put up, 90, 91 points. So I think Duke has the talent to overcome this. The only question is going to be how long he's out. Is it going to extend into the ACC and NCAA tournament, or if they get him back before then? Could be the difference between Duke being a really good team and a tough out and just being able to run roughshod through the NCAA tournament. Because I'll be honest, I'm a Carolina fan. A healthy Trey Jones, I don't see a whole lot of teams that are going to beat that team come March.
No, I agree. And I think at this point you may see them sacrifice some seeding to make sure he's healthy. Because, I mean, what's the worst case scenario for Duke from a seeding standpoint? Of 3? I mean, that's bottom. That's
you're talking really bottoming out. If it were me, the back end, the far end of this AC sprain, they're saying 12 weeks.
Right.
I don't know if he's worst case scenario. I would sit him down a month. A month puts you right before the first Carolina game. And if he's healthy 2 weeks from now, great. We'll see you in 2 more weeks. But if you've seen with Cam Newton, with Andrew Luck, these shoulders, these AC sprains, they're not anything to play with. And if you aggravate that thing and you don't let it get all the way healthy, it's going to nag.
A little bit different sport though, because at least he's not going to be landing on it. I mean that's always Luck's issue and Cam Newton. But before we jump into North Carolina, let's touch base on Clemson one more time. I will say that 0-3 record. Okay, so 2 of those losses are against Duke and Virginia.
True.
Well, who's the third one? I don't remember right off the bat.
Give me 1 second.
It wasn't Florida State, was it?
I don't know. We'll find out. But anyway, keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, when you look at Wake Forest, Boston College, Notre Dame, Miami, there are teams in there that Clemson's going to beat, especially at home. I still think this is Syracuse. Okay, so they've got 3 losses, all 3 to the top top 4 teams in the conference.
Well,
so that does make sense. That's been a really tough ACC schedule for them so far.
Well, 2 of the next 3 games are at Florida State and at NC State, so it's not going to get easier in the near future.
But I think every team under Syracuse in these standings, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, especially the ones they get at home, Clemson can beat all of those teams. I'm not saying they will, but those will be competitive games. Clemson is what I would call right now, they are a top-level Tier 2 ACC program. If you want to divide this league into 3 groups, they're one of the better in the second group.
Okay.
And so, I still think this can be a tournament team. Their overall record, they've already got 10 wins. I don't know. I mean, 9 or 10 more wins it's going to be tough. Look, but it's possible.
It's possible. Still got some important cogs in that roster and in that rotation that made that Sweet 16 run. You got Marquise Reed averaging 19 points a game. Elijah Thomas is still holding things down low. So the ingredients for another Clemson NCAA tournament appearance are still there. I mean, at some point you got to start winning games.
Well, yeah, you're right. But I mean, let's just put it this way: if we had reversed the order of all these games, and we could make Clemson 3-0 in ACC play right now, the 3 games they've lost that would be remaining on their schedule, we'd still have them marked down as L's.
Yeah, they're probably going to lose them anyway.
So that's all that happened was they lost. But it has a different effect on our psyche because they happened in a row and they're winless. And it's kind of hard if you're a Clemson fan to look down and see that orange paw all the way at the bottom of the standings.
Yeah.
It's not bothering me that much.
I checked out for a minute. I thought you were saying it was hard for you to see that at the bottom of the standings.
Now, you going back to that again, are you?
No.
Doing that retro thing?
No. I just What was the famous Roger Clemens? Right? I misheard or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I just
misheard
misheard
lots
you.
of things that day.
Which I've got another theory that's going to tie Roger Clemens. That might be something off the air. The Tar Heels are 3-1 in conference play. The one was Saturday at home to Louisville. That was ugly, man. There's no other way to put that. That was ugly. I saw a lot of, I can't believe they cut our game off. Guys, if you were still watching that thing with 6 minutes to go in the second half, listen, man, I was asleep. I'm not going to lie. I had already decided to take my nap. But, BG, I've watched, every Tar Heel game so far this year. I've come up with three areas of concern that I keep seeing pop up in a lot of other places. Some of it's fair, some of it's not, in my opinion. The first one is turnovers. Right now, if I tell you we are 6th in scoring, we are tied for 2nd in rebounding, we are 7th in the country in assists, where are we in turnovers per game?
I'm going to think it's pretty bad from what I've seen.
What is it, 350-something teams in the country? We are 241st in the nation in turnovers. The second one, the second part of that, Kobe White has got to play under control. A lot of times he and Nassir Littles both are bad about this. They'll get, they don't have that jump stop game. They don't have that jump stop part. They bowl through the lane and just run somebody over. Offensive foul, turnover.
One gear.
The other one.
And people know that and they exploit it.
Oh yeah,
I mean that's what starts to happen there.
The second point that I would like to make, I believe the turnovers are a legitimate concern. The second one, I call it leadership. Mm-hmm. You don't have Theo Pinson, you don't have Joe Barry. Who on this team is chewing somebody's rear end when they come to the sidelines? The other side of that, Kobe White. Kobe White is the all-time leading high school scorer in the state of North Carolina. Not James Worthy, not Michael Jordan. It's Kobe White. So that says he has never really been responsible for getting other people their shots, for getting other people involved. I think that's, since we've hit ACC play now, Kobe White's got 10 assists and 16 turnovers. It's unacceptable. And finally,
do you think those turnovers are a result of him kind of pushing for assists?
I think it's just him not knowing how to play in another gear. I think he's got one gear. He knows all he knows. He presses the gas pedal, goes, and what happens, happens. And way too often it's resulted in the ball coming back the other way. And if you turn it over and it goes out of bounds, when say you're going to play Duke, if you turn it over and it goes out of bounds, okay. But when you turn it over in the open floor and they become live balls, man, Duke is going to run you out of the gym.
South Carolina's women's team, Bianca Cuevas-Moore, that runs the point, she's the same way. She runs about a 4-3 with a basketball at full dribble, but she there is no other speed for her. I mean, half the time, even when she scores, it looks like it was a bloody miracle that she was able to get a shot off before she crashed into the sidewall. And he reminds me a little of that. Like I've noticed what you're talking about.
Man, the kid,
he
can score.
He's an incredible athlete. But you're right. I think it's just awareness. And like you said, I mean, you're coming out of high school, you got by with it.
Yep.
Most of the time, there probably weren't people anywhere around you once you crossed half court at that speed. Like you were.
And I could be wrong, but it seems like I heard Roy Williams give an interview one time talking about his high school team. Like they weren't that great.
Right.
Like it was pretty much just him, and if not for him, they were going to win like 3 games.
And everybody's been to those high school games too. I mean, and I'm friends with a couple of high school basketball coaches around in this area, and I think we live in a really talented area, but not everywhere is like that. And those stats, you saying he's the highest scoring player in North Carolina history, that doesn't mean he's better than James Worthy and Michael Jordan. No, that means he played in a vacuum.
That means he got to shoot the ball as much as he wanted to.
He played in a vacuum, yes.
And finally, a lot of the criticism coming North Carolina's way has been on the play of super freshman Nassir Littles. I got into a pretty heated text argument with a buddy of mine Saturday about him. I compared him to Harrison Barnes when Harrison Barnes was a freshman.
Would this be a buddy who's a big Duke fan?
No, he's a Carolina fan.
Okay.
He's a Carolina fan. Jonathan Hanna. We had him on the show.
Yes.
Yes. But I compared Nassir Littles to Harrison Barnes. And, of course, he jumped all over that. Barnes was much more – I agree. Harrison Barnes was much more polished offensively.
We mean as a freshman?
As a freshman,
Okay.
he was much more polished offensive game. I think Nassir Littles got more athleticism. But I told him, I said, he's remembering Harrison Barnes giving Clemson 40 points in the ACC tournament. I said, go back and look at and remember the first half of Harrison Barnes' freshman year.
We have to be careful with that. That's why I was clarifying the question, because I don't remember Harrison Barnes strongly as a freshman. I'm going to remember the most recent Harrison Barnes, and you can't do that.
No, you can't do that. When you go back, I went back and I pulled up Harrison Barnes' game-by-game stats his freshman year. Like the first half of the year, about to this point, his freshman year, he had scored single digits, 6 or 7 times.
Because this is the time of year when you can see freshmen change drastically in 3 weeks. Just drastically.
And to break it down a little bit even further with that comparison, Barnes he started from day one. That team he came on to was not very good. They didn't make the NCAA tournament the year before. He got almost 30 minutes right from the jump. His freshman year, he played 30 minutes. Nassir Littles was playing 19 minutes a game. So, number one, the numbers are not going to add up number for number. But when you break it down per 40 minutes, the numbers are extremely similar. Harrison Barnes, his numbers come out to 21 points a game per 40 minutes. Nassir Littles are 20. Per 100 possessions, Nassir Littles got a better offensive rating than Harrison Barnes did. And his freshman year, Barnes averaged 16.3 points per game. 14 of the last 18 games that he played, he exceeded that. So that tells me he upped his play in the conference once the conference schedule got going. If you saw the game last night, last 11 minutes, Nassir Littles scored his 11 points. If this guy gets going the next couple weeks, watch out, because he and Kobe White are the keys to North Carolina making a tournament run.
And that's it. The level of competition's there now, and you're to the point in the semester where things should start to slow down a little bit. But you're right; he's going to have to develop better instincts with the basketball in his hand,
yes.
because. But the good thing is, there's always the chance that a lot of these turnovers are repetitious mistakes.
Yeah.
All right. So to provide a really annoying example, but back when I taught high school English, right? So if a kid makes the same grammatical mistake 19 times on a paper, you can't count off 19 times for that. It's just one mistake. So, for example, if it's a particular play that he's struggling with, you fix that error, you may fix 9 of those turnovers.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why you see freshmen grow in chunks, is because certain things click. And we've talked about this before. It's what makes basketball so fascinating to me. Split-second timing, like an extra 1/8 of a second increase in speed from one pass to another makes the entire offense run better.
Yeah,
everything runs better when that one little thing gets fixed.
Well, and I'll tell you,
but we'll see if we're right.
I was say one more thing on Nassir Littles before we move on to the SEC. I wondered out loud whether or not his role is kind of suiting him. Like, I think he's still kind of finding his footing. He's the third-ranked recruit. He's a top 5 recruit coming into this college, and he's coming off the bench. That's not an easy transition to make, no matter how many times everybody says the right thing about it. So, now, granted, I'm not sure whose spot he's going to take right now. I'm not sure that there is a starting spot for him. But I think, I think as the season progresses, he'll improve, and Roy will get him some more run. That 19 minutes will come up to somewhere around 24, 25. And like I said, I think he and Kobe White, if we're going to make a deep tournament run, it's going to be those two guys, because you're going to get what you're going to get from Luke May and Williams and Cam Johnson, but those two guys have got to step it up. Moving on to the SEC side, the standings at the top, all your usual suspects. Tennessee's up there, Kentucky, you've got Auburn, Mississippi State is hanging around there in the top. LSU has had a nice start to the season at 13-3. Ole Miss there at 3-1. Kermit Davis doing a nice job there. But one of these things looked like a hand with a thumb that's been beaten by a hammer. Like, it's just standing out, throbbing. You can't miss it.
Yeah.
The South Carolina Gamecocks are 3-0 in the SEC right now.
And, going back to my Clemson, comparison, 3-0 versus, Florida, they're, like you said, they're a name. They're 1-3 in SEC play, but I mean 3-0 versus decent teams. Okay, I mean, you beat a number 14 ranked team in the country.
That's the one that jumps out at me. That Ole Miss win. That's huge.
I'll tell you what's and it's an old adage in college football, but the biggest game for South Carolina right now is the next game, and then the next game, and then the next game, because people talking about this season like it's gotten turned around, or they need to pump the brakes on that. The beginning of the season was so bad. What this team would have to do in league play to make the tournament is very unlikely.
Well, I was going to say, what do you play? You play 18 games?
Very unlikely.
I think you're sitting at 8-7 right now. So everybody relax on the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, well, but let me
I think you're talking about having to go like 12-6 to get that record.
Let me take a little pressure off of that, though. I think the tournament talk really was over when we lost to Stony Brook. I mean, like that
early?
When Wofford wipes the court with you, forget beating you. It was a 20-point win.
Okay. But Wofford has upped their resume to the point now where beating Wofford is when the NCAA tournament committee selects the field. They got to quadrant. Wofford was a quadrant 1 win. I mean, that's as good a win as you can get.
I get, but what I'm saying is for South Carolina with their league play right now, going into league play before the 3-0. You had to have that Wofford win really to feel good about. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You get them at home. You got to
beat Wofford.
You got to beat
It's
Wofford.
Not a bad loss.
So no, but you see what I'm saying? The numbers just aren't there. But here's the thing. Okay, let me put you on the spot here. I know you don't always listen to the things I say on the show.
I'm honing in. I'm zoning in right now.
When I criticized Frank Martin a month ago, what did I tell you was the biggest problem in South Carolina's basketball program over the last 5 years? Do you remember what I said?
Not off the top of my head.
His inability to hold on to players. I gave you a number, which I had researched that day. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm wanting to say, let's say out of the last 20 signees at South Carolina, he had kept 4 of them, and the rest had left the program. So the key right now is him keeping every one of these kids. Because when I look at what the potential lineup for next year could be, this could be a really good team. I mean, and they're playing really good basketball right now. But they're going to back off some.
They've got a lot of young guys on.
They've got a lot of young guys, and that's my whole point. And this is not. I mean, is Chris Silva playing better? Absolutely. Is Chris Silva helping them win? Absolutely. If these young kids, all right, if A.J. Lawson, if Keyshawn Bryant, if Alonzo Frink, if they keep taking steps forward like they've done so far this year, Chris Silva being off the team next year isn't going to break this team the way that obviously losing some of those guys off that Final Four team did. Okay, and this is the first time in a long time where I see Frank having the potential to actually build a program instead of relying on transfers, right? And we've been at this point before. But when we were at this point before, we lost those guys. You take a guy like Rob Felder, okay? I mean, it's his own fault. But that stuff has happened.
They tried to keep Felder.
That stuff has happened, but you think about this team with him.
All right, no doubt.
Think about
last year's
point.
Team with him.
All right, so my point being is if these kids, whether you want to say they stay out of trouble or whether you want to say that, A.J. Lawson doesn't have some idiotic agent telling him second-round money is better than coming back to Columbia next year, whatever it is, if these kids come back, then I think that there's real potential in South Carolina basketball for Frank to finally turn that corner. And it sounds crazy to say that having made a Final Four. But we've said it, man. The Final Four, you missed that window.
Yeah, that's close.
Except for the fact that it's recent enough so that if you make, let's say you make the tournament next year, which seems to me to be a very realistic expectation for this team. If these kids if they keep playing the basketball they're playing right now, the potential's obviously there. We saw this, when we talked about, the Virginia game, man. Me and you thought that game we were going to lose by 30 points, and we don't.
Well, you did the same
hang
thing.
in that game.
You did the same thing up at Michigan.
Michigan
is steamrolling
so I
folks
think
right
in
now.
retrospect, you look back at it and you saw the beginnings of this. And I remember Frank after the Clemson loss, and it drove people crazy. And I mean, it's time for every fan to realize that not all coaches are in the same place fans are. But they don't care about the same things. The rivalries don't affect them the way they affect us. But he said, I know we lost tonight, but I really like where this team's going. And I mean, I feel like this team is making progress. And if you look at it, that was about the last of that. It was really the game after that when this all started. And so I think that what I'm saying is, while I would love for us to win the rest of our basketball games, I'm going to pull for us in every game. Don't get down on these Gamecocks if they don't make the tournament this year and if they kind of come back to earth, because what you're seeing right now is something that could become, that is much more likely to become consistent next year.
Look,
right.
I don't know what buttons Frank Martin has seemed to push. Mike Kotsar looked like a first-team All-American the other night. Chris Silva, you watch him. We said it on this show earlier on. I wasn't completely convinced. Like, he even wanted to play basketball.
Well, we talked
anymore.
about Kotsar's body language, too.
Yeah,
I mean, there were games where I watched him and I was like, he was actually making me mad. It was like he didn't even want to be.
That's what I said. I'm concerned either one. I wasn't convinced either one of those guys even really wanted to play basketball anymore. But since they've kind of turned around and the Clemson game was the last loss in that 4-game streak,
yes.
right? Since they've hit the conference play, I don't think Silva's numbers are jumping out at you. They're not monstrous, but just take the Missouri game that they just played. For instance, 14 points, 4 boards, 4 blocks, 3 steals, a couple of assists. Like he seems mentally checked back in.
What it says to you is effort.
Exactly.
It says effort.
Mentally checked back in. The other thing is, the knock on South Carolina teams that I've also was how they struggled to score.
Their offenses look pretty good.
They are a half a point off the pace from being the highest scoring team Frank Martin's had down there.
Yeah.
They're half a point off that pace.
And I tell you, man, it was early in the season. That was the thing I was really struggling with. I told you, I said, I can't watch us pass the ball around the 3-point line, then back against the zone, because why would you play anything else against South Carolina the way we were playing? Right, yeah. And since then, it looks like we have an offense. Yeah. Like every possession the first part of the season, it was just like pulling teeth. You just were waiting for some awful thing to happen.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, but it goes back to what I was saying before, and I think a couple of things happened. Obviously, Bryant and Lawson, they didn't struggle to begin with. I mean, they started the season by scoring 21 points apiece the first 2 games. So it was clearly there. We talked about this. I mean, during the losing streak, they were the best 2 players on the team. Yeah. It was Silva and Kotsar that weren't showing up. But I'll tell you what I think it's about. I remember watching an interview with Ray Tanner after our first college baseball world national title, and he basically said, like, I was a hard ass. He was like, I came in here and I realized I was just running these kids down too much, and that I had to let them start kind of.
No, each team has its own personality, and you got to find it.
I think Frank might have made the mistake of assuming either one of those 2 kids could become the vocal leader.
Yeah,
and they're not. You watch Chris Silva, man. Even when he gets fouled like across the side of his face and the ref doesn't call it, and the announcers are even like, "What was that?" Silva's just sort of like, "Yeah, well,
the expression never changes.
It happens. It's okay, man." He's just that laid back, and I think, to be honest with you, I think Frank was probably in his head a little too much. And I think from some comments I've sort of read between the lines that he sort of backed off a little. And I think mostly that's Silva, but maybe that's Kotsar some too.
Well, look, when you show me that you're capable of more, I'm going to expect more, right? And I think maybe that was a big part of it. Was he played really well on that Final Four run. He was a handful last year, and I think Frank Martin, as a senior, expected him to take that next step, and it may be.
Well, Silver really stood out as a freshman. I don't know if you remember. I mean, he had those monster dunks, and he would block the ball to half court when he was 18. I get it.
I always use James Michael McAdoo, and I know that's a curse word to most Carolina fans. But if you go back and look at McAdoo's numbers, they were pretty good, man. Overall, he had a pretty good career at North Carolina. But I think the expectations sometimes just didn't match up with the production. Maybe that was a little bit with Silva.
I think, like we were talking about, different point guards only having one gear. Sometimes I think Frank's only got one gear when it comes to criticism. And I don't know that every player...
There's no filter, and not everybody can handle it.
Not every player reacts that well to that, and I think that was a big part of what you saw. I mean, I could be completely wrong. I'm just a fan watching... just like our listeners are. I don't have any kind of insider information, but I have worked with young people most of my career, and I can read body language pretty well. And I noticed the same thing you were noticing. Silva wasn't even listening to him anymore.
No, he had checked out.
And I'm firmly convinced. But you know what? If Frank has changed that up some, then kudos to him. And you have to think it came from him. I don't think Chris Silva woke up one day and said, you know what?
Which seems to be an odd thing because we've always kind of looked at Frank Martin being like, all right, this is who I am. I'm not changing for anybody. Right. And it kind of seems like he's softened that a little bit.
I think it's obviously helped. Now, we don't want Frank Martin, if he's listening, to think we're calling him soft. There's nothing soft in his body.
Frank Martin is soft as a Charmin tissue paper he wipes his butt with.
I'm firmly convinced that you would not say that to him.
If Frank Martin walked in that door right now, I'd hand him a roll of Charmin.
There would be a TanMan shaped hole in the backside of the studio as you fled the premises.
Oh, man. Finally, the last thing, in my opinion, that's kind of keyed this turnaround, BG, how many guys does Frank Martin play? The bench is pretty short, right?
Well, there's a lot of injuries that no one's really talking about. These guys are definitely getting minutes. I think Jason Cudd, I think he's out for the rest of the year. It was announced this week, and he wasn't playing much. But there are going to be games where you need those guys.
Yeah, you hit it. You've had a lot of injuries. I just found out this week in the case of, how do you say his name?
Cuisinart.
That his scores have kind of been flagged, so he's being held out. So a very short bench by Frank Martin that he's running out there. Their bench has outscored their opponent's bench 12 times this season. The almost non-existent bench.
And let me tell you one name that's made that possible.
12 times.
Hassani Gravett. Hassani Gravett has been a flat-out stud during the second part of the season.
Yeah.
He has, and you watch his body language, man. He actually reminds me of Felder in that Final Four run. Man, that kid wants the basketball right now.
Yeah.
And he seems fine being that sixth man, right? He seems perfectly happy letting the game get going and then coming out there and just popping off. Because he's definitely, and we talked about him in the season preview, and I told you that I thought he had to go back to being a scorer and to stop running point, and BG pats himself on the back. That's exactly what happened. You're finally getting some actual, point guard play out of Trey Campbell. And good news this week, the word is close that Mania will be practicing again within a week or so.
Wow, so that's good. I heard he was going to be out for the year, or at least out indefinitely.
Who knows what the decision will end up being? But again, Gamecock fans, this season is really about next season. Win as many games as you can, but don't get wrapped up in the tournament right now. Now,
make the NIT tournament.
Yeah, make the NIT, and then do something in it.
Look, you got going to Vanderbilt coming up, Vanderbilt.
Tonight. That's a huge one, too.
At LSU, and then you got Auburn, a trip to Stillwater for Oklahoma State, and then you get the Volunteers coming to your place all over the next 3 weeks. So, Gamecock fans feeling great about themselves right now. We'll check back in with you in about another week and a half or 2 weeks. If you're still hanging around, then maybe we can have some serious tournament discussions.
But you do see what I'm saying. I mean, I think this team right now, you've got a foundation for the future. Play your best basketball, but this is all about growth. Grow these kids and actually establish a program in Columbia for the first time, maybe since Eddie Fogler.
Make sure that at the end of the year, You've got more wins than losses so that you're eligible for the NIT. So you can get the opportunity to practice more, to play more. And I firmly believe that 2010 team that North Carolina had, they beat Wake Forest on a Saturday afternoon on the road. Had they not done that, they would have wound up with a losing record and missed the NIT. But they beat Wake Forest. They finished a game above 500, hit the NIT, went on a run all the way to the championship game before they lost, and they followed that up the next 2 years. Now, adding Harrison Barnes helped, but they followed that up with the next 2 years with 2 Elite Eight runs. And I think a lot of it was because they got that tournament experience.
Well, look, Frank Martin's recruiting class for next year, it's not North Carolina. It's not Duke. But it's more of the guys like he's got right now. Solid 3-star kids. Again, this has happened down there before.
Yeah.
Frank has been in this position before, and then he lost everybody.
Yeah.
And if he can hold this squad together, and it sounds crazy, I don't know. I mean, but it's just been snake bit. If he can hold this squad together and keep these kids for 2 more years, there could be a lot of wins on this squad. A lot of wins.
Okay. Speaking of holding things together and keeping guys in the program, we're going to spend the last few minutes of this episode talking about a guy that we have talked about over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right up I-85 in the Queen City, Kemba Walker. Now, he came out the other day, a big article about how he trusted the Hornets front office. So I guess my question to ask you and to ask everybody out there listening, is Kemba Walker right to trust the Hornets front office? Have they given him a reason to trust the front office, or is this just putting blind faith on Kemba's part?
The hard part about it is you want to say, your first instinct is no, he's not right. Because what have they ever done? But then you have to remind yourself, well, what? This is not the same front office. And so, I mean, I'm going to say he is right because I think there's a chance Kemba Walker may know more about Charlotte's inner workings than I do.
I find that unbelievable to believe, but I will take your word for it.
Right before the show started, I informed TanMan and I'm going to go ahead and make it not a secret anymore, that I actually was not heavily recruited as a college basketball player, primarily because I didn't play high school basketball at all, or Little League basketball for that matter. But TanMan was shocked, but not any more shocked than he looks right now. No, but I mean, you have to think that there have been some assurances made, right? And that's his way of letting. You almost feel like Kemba's talking to the fans, like trying to sell them on what this front office is trying to do.
I look at it like this. Another big piece in the Charlotte Observer by Rick Bonnell had come out recently, where it talks about the same things that we've heard Kemba Walker say over and over again, but to actually, I don't know. To me, it just felt different this time when he come out and basically said, "Listen, I love everything about being here. The way this city is, I can walk down the street, I can go and eat, I can be out and about and not be hassled. I can just be a regular dude."
Right.
I think for professional athletes or athletes in general, I think that's not nothing. That's something, man.
We all make the mistake. We did this with Russell Westbrook, right?
Right.
We did this with Russell Westbrook. We assume
did it with Paul George summer.
That we know anything about these guys. I mean, they're not all the same guy. Some of these guys care just as much about quality of life and family life and their surroundings as they do about competing for rings, because Kemba probably knows, if he's realistic,
that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Not standing strong. Another interesting, I didn't know that Kemba Walker, he had ties to Charlotte, as his aunt lived in Charlotte when he was a kid. I had no idea. So this isn't just like some random city.
Yeah.
Like he in a sense, he spent time here as a kid. He grew here some as a kid. They are in an interesting spot because they can either keep going down this path and kind of kick the whole rebuild can down the road until, you give Walker his max deal. You're talking 2024, 2025 before you can really wipe the slate clean and rebuild. They're trying like the devil to move Batum. I don't know if they're going to be able to or not.
Well, he's sure not helping them.
I don't think that he's eligible to be stretched out. You know, they've got the stretch provision. I don't think that he qualifies for that. I don't know what a buyout would look like, but I think even a buyout, you're talking about another year before that is even able to be brought up. So they're in an interesting position. They've got about...
And again, these are
less than a month
inherited
now.
problems.
Yes.
These are inherited problems.
Less than a month now. Yeah, you're talking Sacramento. They got Phoenix coming up in this bunch before the deadline. You've got games with Memphis, Chicago. Games that you can win. Yeah, they sit right now in the 8th spot.
They're 3 games below 500 in the 8th spot. That tells you all about the East you need to know.
I just...
And what's so frustrating, they should be in the 4 spot. That's the talent they have. They just are so inconsistent.
Yeah.
So inconsistent.
I don't... They've gotten losses, like we said the other week. They've gotten losses to Cleveland, Atlanta. The Knicks blew them out. The Cavs blew them out.
The Bulls.
Teams that aren't even trying to win basketball games right now. Beat the brakes off you. And in our preview episode, I said the end of that schedule, the back end of that, is going to be brutal, man. Like, so they have not done themselves any favors. The next three or so weeks in Charlotte are going to be interesting.
But do you not think...
My gut feeling is that Kemba Walker stays. They kick this can down the road another year. At
some point, though, and we've talked about this, man, it feels like we've had shows after show about Charlotte, and it always comes down to Kemba, because what they do with Kemba lets you know it's a litmus test, what their philosophy is. And we talked about, they had a good draft. And we think that this front office is going to be all about the draft. Picking up picks, doing it like the Spurs did it, because that's the blueprint. But like we also talked about, Kemba can't wait on them to build this team through the draft.
Well, it all depends on what he wants out of life. Yeah, that's it.
Well,
that is
again,
it.
You're right.
That's if he wants to be Mr. Charlotte Hornet, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with being Mr. Charlotte Hornet, hanging your jersey in the rafters. Maybe you make an Eastern Conference Finals.
But look, you've got Del Curry, you got Muggsy Bogues, who have never left this organization. I mean, this is a team that will take care of you if those are the kind of goals you've got. You can hang around Charlotte the rest of your life and be affiliated with this team.
Listen, the city of Charlotte, they get a bad rap for how they support that basketball team. A lot of it is deserved. I mean, let's face it. You look at the games on TV. The attendance is terrible. Their attendance numbers are awful. But a guy like Kemba Walker, let's face it, right now he's the reason people are going to games in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to see him. You love the city. You love the fans. They will love you back. And I'm starting to get a gut feeling that Kemba Walker's not going anywhere. I think they're gonna try and make a move at the trade deadline. Whether or not it's successful in moving Batum or not, I have my doubts.
Who's to say Kemba doesn't have front office designs in his head? I mean, we have no idea the kinds of conversations that have taken place.
Right, like I said, you don't know what he values more than anything. So,
some people really love the game of basketball, and they want the best chance they've got to hang around it the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. I mean, not to say that if Kemba left Charlotte, he couldn't come back. I mean, for something like that. But
now, if you want to be Mr. Hornet,
well,
you gotta stay.
I mean,
you got to stay.
You're right, but that would definitely be the best thing for the Hornets if they could keep him
on the spot. What does it do? Is he staying or going?
Oh, I think you're right. I've thought he was staying for a really long time, because we talked about this, man. They missed the window to trade him at the optimal time.
Yeah.
Now, again, that was a different front office.
Yeah.
But this front office inherits that miss, right?
Yeah.
It still happened.
And before we get kicked off there, I just want to say that the only thing I wish is that if he wanted to stay, and this is where he wanted to be, that he would just come out. He would come out and say it, like, just end this whole charade and put this to bed. Because until this is done, until they get some clarity with him, they can't move on as an organization. That is it for episode 92. We appreciate you joining us. Again, like us, download us, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @TheBorderWar. That aggravates BG every time I do all that, so I'll just let it slide. Tell all your friends, make them listen to the show.
I wasn't aggravated at all. I wasn't even.
I saw the look whenever I said something about follow us
I
on
was
Twitter.
watching the lady cleaning the
I saw
carpet.
your look when I said something about follow us on Twitter.
Watching the lady cleaning the carpet.